Ryan, please call. We just want to know that the both of you are safe. The whole family loves you. The whole family wants you both home.
It was the 20th of February 2016 when Morgan Lawrence received a peculiar text message from her husband Ryan Lawrence. He had been scheduled to pick her up from work with their young daughter, but the text message strangely read that the car would be waiting for her outside with the keys inside. When she arrived home, her husband and daughter were nowhere to be seen. The Lawrence family consisted of Ryan and Morgan Lawrence and their 21-month-old little girl, Maddox. The family lived in Valley Drive, Syracuse, New York, in the United States. Ryan had grown up in Baldwinsville and he had excelled in art. As a student at C.W. Baker High School, Ryan won honourable mentions in the Scholastic Art Awards. Ryan had lost his mother, Mary Lawrence, to kidney cancer when he was just 17 years old. Mary had worked at the district attorney's office as a victim's advocate. After Ryan graduated from high school, he went through various low-wage jobs. He had worked at the Real Food Co-op in Syracuse for some time, as well as past abilities in Tivana at Destiny USA Mall in Syracuse. It was at the mall that Ryan and Morgan met. Morgan had graduated from Liverpool High School and afterwards she worked a series of retail jobs. Both Ryan and Morgan had been working together on and off at Past Abilities and Tivana, and Morgan also worked 2 other jobs at the mall, in 2 different clothing stores. While dating, Morgan became pregnant. The couple decided that they would get married and they moved in to the rented home in Valley Drive. According to those who knew the couple, they were inseparable. Then in 2014, Maddox was born. She was said to be an extremely happy baby girl, but as her aunt, Shailene Leonard, said, "You wouldn't think it because she made little monster noises." You can see some photographs of the family on the Vodacast app. Unfortunately, Maddox didn't have the best start in life. When she was just a few months old, Ryan and Morgan noticed that her left eye appeared to be changing in colour, becoming darker. Maddox was taken to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, which is cancer of the retina. When a baby grows in the womb, the eyes are one of the very first things to develop. Eyes have retinoblasts that grow quite rapidly, and later they stop growing, and then they develop into mature retinal cells that can detect light. Sometimes, the immature retinoblasts can continue to grow very fast, but they fail to turn into mature retinal cells. Instead, they grow out of control and develop into cancer. Thankfully, this is quite rare, but this is exactly what happened to Maddox. For a while, the weekend routine for the family consisted of driving to Sloan Kettering in New York City, where Maddox underwent 4 chemotherapy treatments. The treatments targeted the tumour in Maddox's eye, as well as the blood vessels that were feeding it. The family would sit 6 hours for the treatment. Understandably, things for the family were tough. Ryan and Morgan were under intense pressure to help their baby girl beat cancer, but they both worked low-income jobs, and the treatment was very expensive. They took to GoFundMe to try and get donations to help them with their daughter's treatment. Nearly 100 people would donate more than $9,000 to help the family with Maddox's treatments. With Maddox on the mend, things looked to be improving for the family. Those who lived in the area said that Maddox completely doted on her father, Ryan. He delivered morning pastries for the Freedom of Espresso stores around Syracuse, and each morning he brought Maddox along with him. He'd never leave Maddox in the car, carrying her under one arm and pastries under the other. As he delivered pastries with Maddox in tow, Morgan worked at a clothing store in Destiny USA Mall. It was around 10 p.m. on Saturday the 20th of February 2016, and Morgan was just getting off work at Destiny USA Mall. Since the family only had one car, Ryan would typically drop her off at work and then pick her back up. This day was supposed to be no different. Ryan had dropped Morgan off at work that afternoon and he said that he would pick her up with Maddox that night. However, Morgan received a strange text message from Ryan. He told her that he wasn't going to be there to pick her up, but said that the family's car would be in the mall parking lot waiting for her. When Morgan finished off her shift, she went to the parking lot and found the family's car. The keys were inside, so she set off home. When Morgan arrived back to the family's home in the 1000 block of Valley Drive, she found that Ryan and Maddox were not there. She then discovered a very disturbing note. It was a handwritten note from Ryan indicating that he was potentially going to either harm himself or harm Maddox. He also left an 8-minute video which he addressed to Morgan. In the video, he ominously said, "I'm leaving and I'm taking her with me." Morgan immediately called police. She had absolutely no idea why Ryan would want to abduct Maddox or bring her any harm. She said that they were having no marital problems and that Ryan had no mental health issues and was not a drug abuser. In fact, just hours beforehand she had posted a photograph of Ryan holding Maddox. He was smiling as she was giggling. It looked like any regular family portrait of a doting dad caring for his daughter. Now this same dad was accused of kidnapping her. After the situation was assessed, an Amber Alert was issued. The Amber Alert described Maddox as a white female with blonde hair and brown eyes. She was around 2 feet tall and she weighed 26 pounds. She was described as wearing a white shirt with a pink collar and brown poppies on the front, long pink trousers, a blue coat with a pink interior, brown suede shoes and a grey knit hat with pom-poms. The Amber Alert also described Ryan as a white male with brown hair and brown eyes. He was around 5 feet 11 inches tall and he weighed around 170 pounds. He was wearing a grey shell jacket, blue jeans and tan Timberland boots. As for other identifying features, Ryan had a zodiac tattoo on his right hand and a round burn on the bottom half of his right leg. The Amber Alert meant that much of the community was on the lookout for Maddox and her father. Police also asked the public to stay vigilant. Morgan would make a tearful public plea to her husband during a press conference.
If you're listening, please just bring Maddox home. Maddox, I love you, honey. Ryan, please call. We just want to know that the both of you are safe. The whole family loves you. The whole family wants you both home. And we just want to know that you guys are in a good place. And we'd love to see you both as soon as possible.
Police searched the area surrounding the family's home, as well as Destiny USA Mall, but no sign of Morgan and Ryan was uncovered. Police would also call in the Air Force One helicopter from the Sheriff's Department to hover throughout the vicinity, hoping to catch a glimpse of the father-daughter duo. Furthermore, local and state police fanned further afield, searching the area of Onondaga Lake, the Creek Walk, and they even checked in abandoned buildings in both Syracuse and Baldwinsville. You can learn more about the search on the Vodacast app. Another angle police were working on was whether Ryan had taken Maddox to another town or even to another city. Police embarked on train and bus stations, as well as the airport, and checked to see if anybody with the name of Ryan Lawrence had purchased a ticket. They were informed that no such ticket had been purchased. Nevertheless, they continued working this angle and checked surveillance footage, but there was absolutely no sign of Ryan and Maddox. They asked the public to please get in contact if they had seen either, with Sergeant Richard Helderline stating, "There are no specific areas that we are searching, but if information leads to an area, we will go there. We are basically hoping that somebody provides a link to them that we can track." At around 4:30 on the Monday, Baldwinsville police received a call from a woman who informed them that she had spotted Ryan on Downer Street. This was around 10 miles away from Syracuse. She said that she had recognised him immediately, His face had been plastered all across the news, but she also recognised him as a man who had frequently visited the thrift store where she worked. Ryan had entered the store wearing a disguise, but the employee recognised him nevertheless. He was wearing a black wig, a hat, sunglasses and a bandana. He purchased a comforter and then he left the store. Baldwinsville police rushed to the scene and arrested the man on the street nearby. The man told police officers that his name was Roe Rivers. He said that he had just slept under a highway bridge and was heading towards a soup kitchen. He said that he was 21 years old and that his birthday was the 22nd of August 1989. The dates didn't match up. He then changed them, saying that he was born on the 22nd of August 1991 and that he was 24 years old. There was no record of anybody with that name, but the officers knew that the second birthday provided was the same birthday as Ryan. The officers pulled up a photograph of Ryan while Officer Andre Zabek asked the man to smile, like in the photograph. The man smiled and the dimples gave away his identity. The man was asked to remove his hat, to which he complied. It was evident that the long hair was nothing more than a wig. One officer pulled off the wig and the man stated, "You got me." The officer replied, "Who are you?" And the man said, "I'm Ryan Lawrence." He was arrested on the spot. In addition to the disguise, he had been carrying a backpack that contained camping equipment. The backpack also contained a book on how to hide and avoid capture. As news of the arrest was reported in the media, there was a sigh of relief. However, it quickly became apparent that Ryan was alone. Maddox wasn't with him. Ryan was transported back to Syracuse, where he would be interviewed at length. Police still needed to figure out where Maddox was and whether she was safe or not. Ryan would tell police during his interview that he had given Maddox away to a local couple named Chris and Tyler, who then fled to Bolivia. He claimed that he had met the couple at the Syracuse Real Food Co-op, located near Westcott Street, and handed Maddox over to them. Ryan stuck with this story throughout much of the night. He was being interviewed by Detective Scott Clark, who continued to question him about Maddox. He was aggressive in his interrogation, later stating, "I wanted that baby. I wanted that baby right now." As Ryan was questioned, Detective Clark noticed the distinct smell of fire, almost like the smell of a campfire. He thought that maybe Ryan and Maddox had been camping out somewhere, keeping warm with a campfire. The other officer interviewing Ryan was Detective Thomas Skardinsky. He asked Ryan about the couple Chris and Taylor, asking how he'd set up the meeting to hand over baby Maddox. According to Ryan, he'd set the meeting up with them by phone. However, by this point, Ryan's phone records had been pulled, and there was no such phone call. Sticking to his story, Ryan told the officers that Chris and Tyler had watched Maddox grow up on Morgan's Facebook page. But Morgan's Facebook page was private, and there were no Chris's or Tyler's on her friends list. After being confronted with the evidence, Ryan stated, "You won't look at me the same way when I tell you what I did with her body." With this single comment, the officers knew that Maddox wasn't coming home, that Maddox was dead. While Ryan had initially claimed that he had given Maddox away to a local couple, he eventually made an extremely chilling confession. "How did she die?" the third officer, Detective Mark Rusin, asked. Ryan replied, "Blunt force trauma." Ryan told the officers that after dropping Morgan off at work, he drove Maddox to Labrador Hollow, which is a relatively remote state recreation area in Cortland County, consisting of walking trails and an 80-foot waterfall. The area was somewhere that the family, who loved the outdoors, had liked to hike in the past. It's a very picturesque area, but the actions of Ryan at this picturesque scene were unconscionable. Here, Ryan took Maddox to a remote section of woodland near Tinker Falls. He placed her on the floor and then hit her in the back of the head with a wooden baseball bat. He beat his daughter to death before placing her body and the baseball bat in a fire that he had prepared and burned her body for hours, occasionally pouring gas on the fire. He told the officers interrogating him that he had prayed that God would give him a sign before he beat Maddox to death. He said, "God, if I'm not meant to kill her, make her stumble." He told investigators that he stuffed her body into a yellow bag, drove to Syracuse and dropped the car off at Morgan's work. He took the bag containing Maddox's body to the Creek Walk near Bear and Van Rensselaer streets. He dumped Maddox's body into the water, weighing it down with a cinder block. Maddox was already dead before the Amber Alert was even issued. Ryan told police that he had killed his daughter because he was jealous of the attention she got while undergoing treatment for cancer. He said that he'd been jealous that Maddox had been getting more attention from Morgan than he was. Police made their way to Syracuse's Inner Harbour, which is an inlet off the end of Onondaga Creek. They had brought Ryan along with them so that he could point out the exact location where he disposed of his daughter's body. The area was cordoned off as the search began. Police divers were sent into the water where they were able to recover Maddox's body, just along the Creek Walk, which is a popular place for bikers and hikers. Shortly before noon, a yellow bag was pulled up from the water. Police placed the bag on a boat and made their way to the shore. Here, they opened up the bag and found the partially burned body of baby Maddox. She was found near Destiny, USA. Her mother had been at work completely unaware that her husband had just killed their daughter and disposed of her body just a stone's throw away. Ryan would appear in court where he was charged with second-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty before being sent to the Onondaga County's Patrick J. Corbett Justice Centre, where he was being held without bail. Ironically, Ryan's own mother Mary had dedicated her entire life to helping victims of crime as well as their families. Now her own son was standing accused of killing the granddaughter she never got to meet, the granddaughter who had survived cancer, the same thing that ultimately killed her when Ryan was 17 years old. Mary had actually become a victim's advocate after her own brother was murdered in 1990. It was a cruel twist of fate. In announcing the charge to the public, Syracuse Police Chief Frank Fowler first of all said that the police extended their deepest condolences to the family.
This has to be an extremely tough situation for this family to go through and to endure. And we just want to make sure that we extend our condolences before I say anything else.
He stressed that the investigation was still ongoing, hence the lack of information being made public. He stated, "There's a lot of things that I know as I stand here at this podium that I cannot share with you all. We still have a lot to investigate."
This is a tough investigation for all involved, and you're right. When you're talking about a child, you're talking about a special situation. Although every human being's life has a value, but we're supposed to protect our children, and all of us in law enforcement. That's the way we feel, and for most of us, that's the reason why we enter into this line of business here. As challenging as it may be in today's environment, we're willing to step up and don those badges and uniforms each day to stand in the gap, to try to assure that something like this doesn't happen. And when it does, we want to bring closure for the family. But boy, it don't make it any easier.
Due to the horrific nature of the case, police chaplains were called in to assist the officers who had worked on the case, in particular those who were at the scene when Maddox's body was recovered. As details of the gruesome murder were released in the media, the community recoiled in horror. They had all been keeping an eye out for Maddox and Ryan, hoping that the abduction was nothing more than a small family rift that would end with Ryan returning home with Maddox. The murder really hit the community hard. Makeshift memorials would gather at the Inner Harbour near where her body was found, as well as along the Onondaga Creek. One local woman, Melody Wilkinson, said, "This shook up the entire community. This has always been a close-knit community. When something like this happens, we come together as a community. We help each other." Melody decided that she wanted to do something to help. She had a teddy bear workshop in which children could come and hand stuff an animal of their choosing, make a wish on a satin rainbow or heart, and then tuck it into their stuffed animals. She developed a fundraiser in memory of Maddox. She would be selling angel bears, which had angel wings. All proceedings would go to Maddox's mother, Morgan. A candlelight vigil would also be held the day after Maddox's body was found. It was held at the Inner Harbour, and around 150 people came despite the chilly temperatures. They gathered around the makeshift memorial and they passed out candles. By this point, benches in the area were completely covered by stuffed bears and flowers. There was a poster with Maddox's face emblazoned on the front. Heart-shaped balloons were also attached to the railings. There were a number of pastors in attendance, all of whom offered prayers and asked God to watch over Maddox and Morgan. The vigil ended with the group singing Amazing Grace. In addition to the teddy bear workshop, a GoFundMe would be established to help Morgan with the costs of a funeral and other expenses. Her entire world had just been completely ripped out from underneath her, and the last thing she needed to be thinking of was bills. In total, over $35,000 would be raised, completely overpassing the $10,000 goal. With Ryan behind bars, those who knew the family tried to reconcile the man they knew, the man who had fought to save his daughter's life, with the man who now stood charged with murdering her. Questions were raised about whether there were any warning signs, or anything that could indicate that Ryan was capable of such a heinous crime. His family stated, "What we saw of Ryan is that he loved Maddox intensely, and so we are struggling to make sense out of this tragedy, but we are not successful, and we know that we never will be." His brother would speak with the Post-Standard and tell them that there was absolutely nothing to suggest that Maddox was in danger while in the company of her father. Rich Lawrence and the rest of the family had been supporting Morgan, and Rich said to the newspaper, "Maddox is the victim, and my brother is to blame." He said that he could not even recognise his brother, stating that he was a shell of somebody he once knew. He spoke about his brother before the murder of Maddox, stating that he was a slacker and that he was selfish, but he had never seen him hurt anybody. He revealed that Ryan was always coming up with these outlandish ideas, such as moving to Florida out of the blue and training to become an Olympic skier. But these were all extravagant pipe dreams. He said, "I know what Ryan did is unforgivable and he does not deserve my support. We are on Maddox's side, the side of the victim." Due to the horrific murder, Ryan was being held in protective custody in jail. Child killers are among the lowest of the low in the prison hierarchy, and Ryan had a target on his head. Judge Stephen Doherty would order a psychiatric evaluation, which meant the two doctors would be examining Ryan to determine competency. His defence lawyer, Michael Vavonis, had requested the evaluation. In mid-March, State Senator John DeFrancisco would introduce a new bill, which would make the murder of a child 12 years old and under a first-degree murder. The State Senate had passed a similar bill the year beforehand, but it unfortunately didn't make the cut and received no votes in Assembly. State Senator DeFrancisco said that he wanted to name the bill after Maddox. In New York, first-degree murder was a rare charge. However, just a couple of days later, the second-degree murder charge against Ryan was increased to a first-degree murder charge. District Attorney William Fitzpatrick said that he believed that under state law, Ryan could be charged with kidnapping Maddox with the intent to kill her. This would make him eligible for the first-degree murder charge. The indictment read, "After abducting Maddox Lawrence, the defendant unlawfully brought her to a remote and secluded location in Cortland County and intentionally struck Maddox Lawrence in the head with a wooden baseball bat, resulting in blunt force trauma that caused her death. The defendant then placed her body and the baseball bat in a prepared fire pit for hours." Defence Vavonis would question whether the first-degree murder charge was appropriate. He said that he was planning on challenging the charge and also said he would possibly be presenting a defence of extreme emotional distress or insanity. Ryan had already been examined by a psychiatrist who found that he was competent to stand trial. During the court hearing, Morgan was there with her family. It was the first time she had seen her husband since he was accused of murdering their daughter. As he was led into the courtroom, her grief was audible. Ryan glanced at the faces in the courtroom, looking towards Morgan and then towards his family. He only spoke to confirm his name. His defense lawyer tried to get a reasonable bail set for his client, highlighting the fact that he had no criminal record and that his father was a long-time engineer at Lockheed Martin and could provide him with a place to stay. District Attorney Fitzpatrick argued that the crime Ryan was accused of made him not worthy of bail. He noted the fact that Ryan was wearing a disguise when he was arrested indicated the fact that he planned on fleeing. State Supreme Justice John Bernetti would remand Ryan into custody without bail. The following month, Ryan appeared in court once more, this time for a trial date to be scheduled. He was ordered to stand trial for the murder on the 19th of September 2016. Mother's Day came in May, and the makeshift memorial for Maddox along the Onondaga Creek Walk was filled with Mother's Day cards, balloons and roses. It was the first Mother's Day for Morgan since she lost her baby girl, her only child. In early June, Ryan would request that his murder trial be moved out of Onondaga County. His defense lawyer argued that it should be moved to Cortlandt County, which was where the murder had taken place. He said that the media coverage within Onondaga County was far too pervasive for Ryan to receive a fair trial. As that decision was being made, Maddox's law passed 61-0 in the Senate. It was a new legislation that would make murdering a child under the age of 13 a first-degree murder. It would now be going to the Assembly for its consideration. As mentioned, a similar bill died in the Assembly just the year beforehand. As it stood, the law allowed for suspects to be charged with first-degree murder, but only if they killed a police officer, correctional facility employee, judge, firefighter, emergency medical technician, ambulance driver, paramedic, physician, or a registered nurse. Somebody could also be charged with first-degree murder if the murder was carried out during a kidnapping, which was Ryan's case. Senator John DeFrancisco would speak about the new legislation.
The horrible story is that a father had the child with him. The parents were separated, but had the child with him, Maddox, and this poor little child was taken by the father and ultimately was killed by the father. And we have different laws about homicide cases and different sentences. And when the death penalty was found to be illegal in the state of New York, there's a series of bills dealing with certain types of murders that require different types of sentences. Well, this case would only be a murder in the second degree, which would be the life imprisonment. It was one possibility where you have an opportunity for parole. It could be 25 to life, where someone gets out on parole before he's left this world. And I felt that this should be the most serious. The death of a child under 10 years old. I mean, how can you not think that that's one of the most serious, if not the most serious type of crime, helpless child? I thought that should be punishable by life imprisonment without parole, since we don't have the death penalty in the state of New York, and it's the most that can be done.
Meanwhile, during preliminary hearing, defense Valvanese would seek to get Ryan's confession thrown out of evidence. He said that when Ryan was arrested and brought in for questioning, his father had hired an attorney to represent him. He claimed that the interrogation should have ended the moment the defense attorney, Scott Brennick, was called. According to prosecutor Jeremy Calley, however, Ryan turned down the defense lawyer. They argued that even if the interrogation should have been stopped under normal circumstances, the officers did have a justifiable reason for continuing the interrogation. Maddox was still missing, and they desperately were trying to find her and save her life. The detectives who had conducted the interrogation would testify about what Ryan told them. As Detective Rusin testified, Ryan broke down crying from the defendant's table. The details provided were grim, and it was the first time that most people got to hear what actually happened to Maddox. Ryan would take to the witness stand, and while his defence had been trying to get the confession thrown out of evidence, he would tell the courtroom that he did confess to the murder of Maddox. It was the first time that he had publicly admitted to what he had done. He told the courtroom that he had first of all lied, claiming he had given Maddox away to a couple, before finally admitting what he had done. He said, "There was a point that I told them that the story I'd given them for ours was false." Ryan said that he had also expressed a desire to stop talking to the officers just hours into the interrogation. He said that moments before his confession, he had said, "I don't want to continue anymore." He said that he continued to talk anyway, even taking investigators to the specific area where he had burned Maddox's body. However, after admitting to making the confession, Ryan claimed that the confession was coerced, and that one of the officers had pushed him when he refused to look him in the eyes. It was quite incredulous considering Ryan had led police to Maddox's body. County Court Judge Anthony Alloy would ultimately decide that Ryan's confession could be used as evidence in the upcoming trial. In announcing the decision, he said, "The court finds it was Ryan Lawrence who spun his web of deceit in order to create a facade of innocence, and as a result, therefore, he created the very emergency that he now asserts did not exist. Under law, police have a duty to help those whose lives could be in danger, and this overrides Ryan's right to a lawyer. As the judge said, the right to a lawyer should not be a barrier to locate a missing child." Just a few months after the hearing, Ryan appeared in court, where he pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of Maddox. His guilty plea had come as part of a plea agreement, in which he pleaded guilty in exchange for a sentence of 25 years to life. If he had have gone to trial and been convicted of the murder, he could have been facing a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Since he was convicted of a violent felony, there was no chance for any time to be taken off his sentence. The minimum he would be serving was going to be 25 years. Before the plea could be accepted, Judge Alloy told Ryan he needed to stand up and fully acknowledge what he had done. He then read out details of the murder.
It's alleged that you, Ryan Lawrence, being over 18 years of age, being over 18 years old, on or about the 20th day of February 2016, committed kidnapping in the first degree, and that in the course of and in furtherance of such crime, you intentionally caused the death of 22-month-old Maddox Lawrence. To wit, it is more specifically alleged that after abducting Maddox Lawrence from Onondaga County, the defendant unlawfully brought her to a remote and secluded location in Cortland County and intentionally struck Maddox Lawrence in the head with a wooden baseball bat, resulting in blunt force trauma that caused her death. That you then placed her body and the baseball bat in a prepared fire pit for hours. Afterwards, the defendant took Maddox Lawrence's charred remains, consisting of her head, torso, and parts of her legs, and placed them in a container, and transported them back to Onondaga County, tied the remains to a cement block, and disposed of those remains in Onondaga Creek. Are all of those allegations true?
Yes, sir.
How do you plead then to the charge of murder in the first degree in violation of Penal Law 125.27, subdivision 1A7, subparagraph B? How do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
In court, Prosecutor Calley said that Maddox's family had agreed to the plea deal to avoid a trial. The judge said he wouldn't have accepted the plea deal without their consent. Motivation plays a part when it comes to sentencing murderers. For example, somebody who committed a cold and calculated murder could be sentenced differently than somebody who committed a murder in the heat of the moment. The question of why still remained. Ryan had claimed that he was jealous of his daughter during his confession, but other than that, there had been no more mention of a motivation. Prosecutor said that Ryan's actions in the aftermath of Maddox's murder, such as burning her body and disposing of her remains and then going on the run, was evidence of a cold and calculated murder. His defense lawyer, however, said that Ryan had been a loving father and that something within him must have snapped. Defense Valvanese said, "I don't know that we'll ever be able to comprehend and understand exactly why he got to this emotional state." Prosecutor Calley quipped back that he didn't know whether Ryan had been a good father before killing Maddox, stating, "All I know is he killed his daughter." Defence Valvanese would claim that Ryan felt extreme remorse over what he had done to Maddox, and said that a psychiatrist had determined he was suffering from extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the murder. The prosecution had hired their own expert, who disagreed with this finding. The sentencing phase would be scheduled for November, but before then, a permanent memorial for Maddox was erected along the creek walk. It consisted of a stone plaque which read, "Maddox Lawrence, rest in the arms of the Lord," alongside a bench. Ryan Lawrence appeared in court on the 15th of November for the sentencing phase. Maddox's family were able to provide victim impact statements. Her grandmother, Robin Forster, revealed that after Ryan was arrested, he divorced Morgan. Instead of asking for memories of their daughter, the daughter he had killed, he asked for a fish tank, a picture of his dog, and a bike without any wheels. As Robin said, these are things of value and importance to him. She glanced towards Ryan and asked, "Was Maddox ever important to you?" She said that life was now tough for the entire family, who had nothing left but memories. She said that her voice would shake whenever she even mentioned her granddaughter's name, and that being in the house where they had cared for Maddox was hard. Maddox's grandfather, Michael Forster, also had some words to say.
"It is so unfair that my daughter had to experience this tragedy, let alone live the rest of her life with this sad reality. I wish somehow I could have protected her from this loss, but I could not. I am also the deeply saddened grandfather of Maddox Lawrence. I miss her every day as I wake up, reminded of what Ryan Lawrence has done. I cannot fathom how a father is able to take the life of their own child. The killing of Maddox totally infuriates me, completely disgusts me, and ultimately saddens me. But it has also created in me an overwhelming feeling of loss. Before Maddox was murdered, on my days off, Morgan would drop her daughter off for the day. My daughter would announce when she saw me, "Hey, look, Max, look who it is. It's your best friend." I would feel so honored. I wasn't just Grandpa. I was Maddox's best friend. Tea party was one of her favorite things to do. She loved this American Girl doll table, chairs, and tea set. She would actually sit on the small chair and play with the cups on the table. And then we would just do whatever Maddox wanted. Of course, I would tickle her every chance I got. Her laugh was so hearty, her smile so big. She would look at me with her brown eyes and melt my heart. I miss those days. I feel robbed.
Maddox would never get the chance to go to preschool or even learn her first words, said her grandfather, Michael Forster. She would never get to go to the New York State Fair with her grandparents ever again, play in the leaves in the fall, or go to prom. He said that when he and Robin spent time with their own children and grandchildren, it was tainted with sadness of what they lost with baby Maddox. Morgan would speak during the sentencing phase. It was the first time she had spoken publicly since Ryan was convicted of their daughter's murder.
Any one of our family members or friends would have gladly taken her from you if you had just told her that you were feeling you were going to harm her. His completely irrational actions have left me with no answers or closure. Ryan has not only taken my daughter away, but also abandoned me as well, leaving me with feelings of extreme loneliness and sadness. This situation also leaves me questioning my own judgment of others' intentions and their character. Burying my daughter alone was the single most howling experience I've ever endured. Knowing her death was at the hands of a man that I once loved entrusted with our lives shakes me to the core because of what Ryan has done. I can never again be sure that I know someone for who they truly are.
She told the courtroom that she had been suffering from extreme anxiety since her daughter was taken from her, and that she struggled to hold down a job. She said that being alone was hard, but it was even harder to be surrounded by people, because much of the time people wanted to talk about Ryan and how he killed Maddox.
Maddox was loved by everyone she met. She was strong and inspiring. She's missed greatly by everyone who knew her. And those who were very close to her, such as our family, are heartbroken and outraged. I want her to be known for who she was, and I want to be known for the loving mom and wife that I truly was. As a result of Ryan's actions, I need for him to spend the rest of his lifetime in prison. I fear for my safety, and I fear for the safety of others who are released back into the community. He's deceived everyone in his life with ease. And he's betrayed all of us with his actions. He's charismatic and believable when he wants to manipulate the situation in his favor. Before parole board in 25 years from now, he may seem remorseful, he may beg and plead to be released, he may claim to be changed. Please don't be fooled. He's a monster.
She then turned to Ryan and asked, "I would give anything to hug her again. I just think it's so cowardice, what you did. What was the point?"
This is the most horrible thing I've ever endured in my life. But I want you to know, you will not drag me down. I will rise above this and honor my daughter in my own life. You took Maddox's only chance at life, Ryan. Therefore, you don't deserve another chance at your own.
Other family members spoke of their grief and the loss that had been taken from them by Ryan. His brother Rich stated, "You're not the brother I thought you were. You murdered your best shot at happiness." He spoke about how he encouraged his brother when he found out that he and Morgan were expecting a baby girl. He felt tremendous pride and had hoped that becoming a father would help him with his internal struggles, before stating, "If the love for your child doesn't provide a brighter future for you, nothing ever will." You can watch this testimony on the Vodacast app. Following the victim impact statements, Ryan was allowed to address the court. He read from a prepared statement.
It's incredibly hard to talk about this for many reasons, and even harder to find the words to explain such a horrible crime. It's with all of my heart that I convey my sincerest apology to everyone for taking Maddox from her family and everyone who loved her. I'm also utterly sorry for denying Maddox her chance at life. I can't expect your forgiveness, but I tell you now that the sorrow I feel for what I've done is complete and comes from the deepest depths of my being. This sorrow I feel has nothing to do with being in jail, but for the pain, for the loss of Maddox. I miss her so bad. Max is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'd say that to her all the time, and to anyone else who'd listen. It was amazing to have her everywhere I went, including all the times I brought her to work with me.
He did not provide any kind of motivation for his actions.
In no way can I justify my actions, and there is no one to blame but myself. There is no good explanation for such a horrendous crime, and regret is too simple a term to describe what I feel. What I can say is I've never felt such strong emotions towards anything in my life than my ever-growing and unconditional love for Maddox, and now I'm completely distraught by overwhelming grief and anguish for what I've done. Max was always at the top of my list, and is constantly, to this day, the focal point of my thoughts and actions since she first came into my life. I'll never overcome this feeling of loss, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how I got to such a dark, irrational state.
Ryan's defence lawyer noted that a doctor who had examined Ryan suggested that his own bad feelings as a child could have potentially led him to undervaluing his own daughter's life. Prosecutor Fitzpatrick would also reveal during the sentencing phase that Ryan had taken his daughter on a dry run of the murder just the day beforehand. He had dropped Morgan off at work and then took Maddox to the remote spot near Tinker Falls. He took her to the woods where he built a fire pit. He stated he did everything except strike the baby with the bat. Ryan Lawrence was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The judge addressed him before handing down the sentence.
There is no term. There is no term for a parent who loses a child. That's how awful it is. I say this to you in order to describe to everyone, in some small way, the scope and breadth and devastating result of your callous and selfish and horrific acts in taking Maddox's life. You had no right. You had no right to decide when she should die. And what you did not kill was the love in the hearts of so many relatives and friends. That love in their hearts will live forever.
Ryan would later permit an interview with the Post-Standard from behind bars. It was hoped that he could finally put to bed the question of a motivation. But Ryan provided no insight into what caused him to kill his own daughter. He told the reporter, "What I was trying to do was not evil. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody." Ironic, considering the fact he beat his almost 2-year-old daughter to death with a baseball bat. Ryan claimed that he'd been suffering from emotional distress, describing it as a growing storm in his head. He said that he was working a dead-end job and was unable to support Morgan and Maddox. While he claimed he was suffering from a psychotic disorder, two psychiatrists who had examined him in jail said he did not suffer from a mental illness. According to Ryan, he planned on killing Maddox and then getting as far away as possible and killing himself. Dr. James Knoll said that Ryan had brought along a sheet of plastic to the scene where he killed Maddox, and this was evidence that Ryan knew exactly what he was doing and knew that it was wrong. He had wanted people to believe that he and Maddox had simply run away together. Ryan claimed he wasn't trying to flee, but instead make his way to the Ohio River, where he could kill himself and his body float to the Caribbean, which was where his mother's ashes were dispersed back in 2008. He said he planned on starving himself to death, getting an infection, or succumbing to the elements. His comments were completely irrational and really offered no insight into the disturbing murder. For months, Ryan Lawrence had desperately fought alongside his wife to keep their baby daughter alive. Before Maddox was even 1 year old, she had fought cancer and she had beat it. Before Maddox even got a chance to live a normal life, just like any other little girl, that was cruelly taken away from her. Even more poignant, it was taken away by the one man in her life that she should have been able to depend on. The one man who had seemingly done everything in his power to help her beat cancer, only to take everything away from her in just a matter of minutes. Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'd like to say a big massive thank you to my amazing new Patreon supporters, Kim and Angela. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, the link is in the show notes. In exchange for your support, you get ad-free and early release episodes of Morbidology each week, bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus each month, behind the scenes including audio, videos and case files, and I also send out a thank you card with some cool merch. Can I please ask that if you enjoy this show, consider leaving me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're listening. Ratings and reviews are an easy way to support a show that you like, and I love to read your comments. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read our true crime article.